Okay, hi guys. It's nice to be back here with you all again. We're going to pick up where we left off. Alright, so I am reading the Theurgia, which is also known as the Mysteriis Aegyptiorum, translation, the Egyptian Mysteries, or as the Mysteriis, also known as on the Mysteries of the Egyptians, Chaldeans, and Assyrians. Okay, so I'm going to pick up where we left off. Just give me a second to pull that up. All right, yeah, I'm picking up again on souls. All right, so let me just go over to that really quickly. I've been scrolling back and forth, going between like this person's questions and also the other person's answers. And yeah, so it's also very interesting who these people are. Okay, so just quickly look at my notes on that as well. It's a lot to remember. Okay, so yeah, there's two people. Okay, there's somebody named Porphyry who's asking the questions, and then there's Abamam, who's the teacher. And Abamam, or Anebo, it says that he's addressed as an Egyptian priest, and his name is that of Anubu or Anubis. So he was a prophet or servant of divinity, an expounder of the oracles, so like somebody that's in tune with, and it's almost like channeling the voice of, this demon, right? So he's tuned into the knowledge, and he was actually, he was somebody that was very highly revered in his day. And this person who's asking the questions was also actually someone that was also highly revered. He knew a lot. He actually, for the sake of this question and answer thing, I think he was actually playing a little bit stupid so that he like playing a devil's advocate, as it was, asking questions that he already knew the answers because he just wanted to get more information, So that's where that is at. Now I left off where he was about to start asking, I think it was about the souls. So let me just run back over there. Sorry. I'm scrolling back and forth. I probably shouldn't be doing that, but I thought it might make it more interesting. Okay, no. Yeah, I read the answer about the souls, I think is what happened. Yes, okay. Yes. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to read this a little bit again just to pick up where we left off, okay? Souls. But with souls that are ruling over bodies that are occupied with the care of them and that are placed in order apart by themselves in the eternal regions before the transition to generated existence, there is not present either the essence of the good or the cause or supreme principle of the good, which is prior to essence. But there comes from it a certain participation and habit of good, as we perceive that a sharing of beauty and virtue is very different from what we observe with human beings. For this is equivocal and becomes manifest in complex natures as a soul, and that's spelled S-O-L-E, as an individual thing acquired. But the principle of goodness is established, unchangeable and perpetual in the soul. It never at any time goes away from itself, nor is it taken away by anything else. That is actually very, very profound, what he just said there. I'm going to be writing about that in a little bit later. At any rate, that was actually very profound, what he said right there. And I'll elaborate on that when I write about it. Okay, so now we're going to come back to the questions. And we left off at number 4, the invocation of the theurgic powers. So this is the person asking the questions. It perplexes me greatly to form a conception of how they're invoked as superior beings to form a conception of how they who are invoked as superior beings are likewise commanded as if they were inferior. Also, that they require the worshipper to be just, although when entreated, they themselves consent to perform unjust acts. That's a very good question. They will not hearken to the person invoking them if he's not pure from sexual contamination, yet they themselves do not hesitate to lead individuals into unlawful sexual relations. Damn good question. There's a good answer, too. Okay, 5, sacrifices and prayers. I'm likewise in doubt in regard to the sacrifices, what utility or power they possess in the world and with the gods. For what reason are they performed? Appropriate for the beings, thus honored, and advantageously for the persons who present the gifts. The gods also require that the interpreters of the oracles observe strict abstinence from animal substances in order that they may not be made impure by the fumes from the bodies, and yet they themselves are allured most of all by the fumes of the sacrifices of animals. Yeah, good question. 6, conditions for successful results. It's also required that the beholder must be pure from the contact of anything dead, and yet the rites employed to bring the gods hither, many of them, are made effective through dead animals. What then is more preposterous than these things? That a human being inferior in dignity should make use of threats, not to a demon or soul of some dead person, but to the Sun King himself, or to the moon, or some one of the divine ones in the sky, himself uttering falsehood in order that they may be caused to speak the truth. For the declaration that he will assail the sky, that he will reveal to view the arcana of Isis, that he will expose to public gaze the ineffable symbol in the innermost sanctuary, that he will stop the Beres, that, like Typhon, he will scatter the limbs of Osiris, or do something of a similar character. What is it but an extravagant absurdity, threatening what he neither knows how nor is able to perform? What dejection of spirit does it not produce in those who, like children, destitute of intelligence, are dismayed by groundless fear and terrified by these false alarms? And yet Sherman, the scribe of the temple, records these things as current discourse among the Egyptian priests. It's also said that these threats and others of like tenor are very violent. Now, in the notes here, it says, as the term Egyptian is applied only in this work to individuals of sacerdotal rank, the designation of priest is added. The hierogrammatius, or scribe of the temple, was a priest of the lower class, and his duty was to keep the records, teach students the religious observances, and take care that they were duly obedient. The prophets were superior to the scribes. The temples of Egypt, like those of Babylonia, were seminaries for instruction, and all departments of science and philosophy were included in their teachings as being sacred learning. Sacred names and symbolic expressions. The prayers also, and this is more questions, okay? What do they mean when they speak of the one coming forth to light from the slime, sitting on the lotus blossom, sailing in a boat, changing forms according to the season, assuming a shape according to the signs of the zodiac? For so this is said to be seen at the Autospias, and they unwittingly attribute to the divinity a peculiar incident of their own imagination. If, however, these expressions are uttered figuratively and are symbolic representations of the forces, let them tell the interpretation of the symbols. For it's plain that if they denote the condition of the sun, as in eclipses, these would be seen by everyone who looked at it intently. Why also are terms preferred that are unintelligible? And of those that are unintelligible, why are foreign ones preferred instead of those in our own language? For if the one who hears gives attention to the signification, that it is enough that the concept remains the same, whatever the term may be. For the divinity that is invoked is possibly not Egyptian in race, and if he is, He's far from making use of Egyptian speech, or indeed any human language at all. Either these are all artful contrivances of jugglers and disguises, having their origin in the passive conditions induced about us through being attributed to the divine agency, or we have left unnoticed conceptions of the divine nature that are contrary to what it is. 8. The first cause. I desire you further to declare plainly to me what the Egyptian philosophers believe the first cause to be, either mind or above mind, and whether one alone, or subsisting with another, or with several others, whether unbodied or embodied, whether the very same as the creator of the universe, demiurgos, or prior to the creator. Also, whether they likewise have knowledge respecting primal matter, or of what nature the first bodies were, and whether the primal matter was unoriginated, or was it generated. For Charmon and the others hold that there's not anything else prior to the worlds which we behold. At the beginning of their discourses they adopt the divinities of the Egyptians, but no other gods except those called planets, those that make up the zodiac, and such as rise with these, and likewise those divided into decans, those which indicate nativities, and those which are called the mighty leaders. The names of these are preserved in the almanacs, together with their routine of changes, their risings and settings, and their signifying of future events. For these men perceived that the things that were said respecting the sun god as the demiurgos, or creator of the universe, and concerning Osiris and Isis, and all the sacred legends, may be interpreted as relating to the stars, their phases, occultations, and revolutions in their orbits, or else to the increase and decrease of the moon, the course of the sun, the vault of the sky as seen by night or by day, or the river Nile, and, in short, they explain everything as relating to natural objects, and nothing as having reference to incorporeal and living essences. More of them likewise attribute to motion of the stars whatever may relate to us. They bind everything, I know not how, in the indissoluble bonds of necessity, which they term fate or allotment, and they also connect everything with those gods whom they worship in temples, and with carved images and other objects, as being the only unbinders of fate. 9. Nativities and guardian demons. These are more questions. The next thing to be learned relates to the peculiar demon or guardian spirit. How the lord of the house, and there's a note here, Greek. In astrology, a house is a 12th part of the sky as marked out for the purpose of horoscopes. And they're talking, and it also says here, Baalzebul. Every sign of the zodiac thus had a house which a planet or planetary genius was considered as occupying, and hence ruling the days and events of the month to which it belonged. Okay. How the lord of the house assigns it, according to what purpose or what quality of emanation or life or power comes from it to us, whether it really exists or does not exist, whether it's impossible or possible actually to find the lord of the house. Certainly, if it's possible, then the person has learned the scheme of his nativity. Knowing his own guardian daemon is liberated from fate is truly favored by divinity. Nevertheless, the rules for casting nativities are countless and beyond comprehension. Moreover, it's impossible for expertness in astral observations to amount to an actual knowing, for there's great disagreement in relation to it, and Charmon, as well as many others, have spoken against it. Hence, the assumption of a lord of the house, or lords of the house if there are more than one, pertaining to a nativity is almost confessed by astrologers themselves to be beyond absolute proving. And yet, it is from this assumption they say that the ascertaining of the person's own personal daemon is possible. But further, I wish to be informed whether our personal daemon presides over some specific one of the regions within us. For it seems to be believed by some people that there are daemons allotted to specific departments of the body. One over the health, one over the figure, another over bodily habits, forming a bond of union among them, and that one is placed as superior over all of them in common. And further, they suppose that there is one guardian demon of the body, another of the soul, and another of the superior mind. Also that some demons are good and others bad. I am in doubt, however, whether our particular daemon may not be a special part of the soul, and hence he who has a mind imbued with good sense would be the truly favored one. I observe, moreover, that there is a twofold worship of the personal daemon. Also, that some perform it as to 2 and others as to 3, but nevertheless he's invoked by all with a common form of invocation. And 10. Eudaimonia, or the true success. Last questions. I question, however, whether there may not be some other secret path to true success which is far from the rites of the gods. I doubt whether it's really necessary to pay any regard to the opinions of individuals in regard to the divine endowment of divination and theurgy, and whether the soul does not now and then form grand conceptions. On the contrary, also, there are other methods for obtaining premonitions of what will take place. And perhaps also, they who exercise the divine art of divining may indeed foresee, and yet they're not really successful, for they may foresee future events and not know how to make use of the foresight properly for themselves. I desire from you, therefore, show me the path to success, and in what the essence of it consists. For among us philosophers there's much wrangling, as though good might be derived from human reasonings by comparison of views. If, however, this part of the inquiry, the intimate association with the superior race, is passed over by those who devised it, wisdom will be taught by them to trivial purpose, such as calling the divine mind to take part about the finding of a fugitive slave or purchase of land, or, if it should so happen, a marriage or a matter of trade. Suppose, however, that this subject of intimate communion with the superior race is not passed over, and those who are thus in communication tell things that are remarkably true about different matters, but nothing important or trustworthy in relation to the true success, employing themselves diligently with matters that are difficult, but of no use to human beings. Then there were neither gods nor good demons present, but on the contrary, a demon of that kind called vagabond, or it was all an invention of man, or an air castle of a mortal nature. Okay. Now, I'm jumping over back to the answers here. If I can remember where I left off. Just hang on, I'm pretty sure. Okay. So he was asking about souls. And I already read that. Okay, so now we're going to go to demons and heroes, or half-gods. Such then being the case with the divine races, the first and the last, the gods and souls, let us consider the 2 races intermediate between these 2 extremes, namely, 1, that of heroes or half-gods, which not only ranks higher than the order of souls in power and virtue, moral beauty, greatness, and excels it in every good quality which is incident in souls, but is also closely joined to them by the kindred relationship of a similar form of life. The other, the race of demons, which is closely allied to the gods, yet is in a certain sense inferior to them, following as though it was not first in rank, but accompanying in subservience to the good pleasure of the gods. This race causes the otherwise invisible goodness of the gods to become visible in operation, becoming itself both assimilated to it and accomplishing perfect works that are like it. For then, what was before unutterable in it is made capable of being uttered. What was without form is caused to shine forth in visible figures. the demons. Whatever of it was beyond all reasoning is brought forth into plain words, and having already received the connate participation of beautiful gifts, it bestows the same ungrudgingly and transfers them to the races that rank after itself. Thus, these intermediate races complete the common bond of gods and souls and render the connection between them indissoluble. They not only bind these together in one continuous series, though from those on high to the very last, but they make the union of them all incapable of being separated, and to be a most perfect blending and an equal intermingling of them all. They likewise, after a manner, cause an outgoing influence to go forth equally from the superior to the inferior races, and a reciprocal one from subordinate races to those ranking above them. They also establish order among the more imperfect races, and likewise due proportions of the gift coming down from the better ones, and of the reception which takes place, and having themselves received from above, from the gods, the causes or motives of all these, they make everything agreeable and suited in every respect to all. Thou must not think, therefore, that this classification is a peculiarity of powers, or of energies, or of essence, nor are you taking them separately to inspect them one by one. Nevertheless, by extending the inquiry through all of them, you will complete the answer to what was asked in relation to the peculiarities of gods, demons, and half-gods, and of those that are included in the category of souls. Let us proceed again by another line of argument. Everything, whatever it might be, and of whatever quality that is united, that is firmly established in itself by unalterable law, and is a cause among the indivisible essences, that is immovable, and so is to be considered as the cause of all motion, that is superior to all things and has nothing whatever in common with them, that is to be generally considered as wholly unmingled and separate, not only in being, but in power and energy. Every such thing should be ascribed to the gods as being worthy of them. But that which is already divided into a great member, that which can give itself to other objects, that which both receives from others the limitations within itself, and is sufficient for the distribution among imperfect ones to make those complete, that nevertheless participates in the primary and life-giving motion, and has communion with all things self-existent and coming into existence, that receives a commingling of substances from them all, and imparts a radiating influence from itself to all, and that extends these peculiar properties through all the powers, essences, and energies in itself. All this, speaking what is true, we shall ascribe to souls as being implanted in them. The intermediate races. What shall we say then in regard to the intermediate races? I think from what's been said already that they are sufficiently manifest to everyone, for they make complete the indivisible connection between the extreme races. There's a note here. It's what they're saying. What he's saying there by saying an indivisible connection between the extreme races, he's meaning the gods above and the souls below, angels, demons, and demigods. Nevertheless, it's necessary to continue the explanation. I assume accordingly the race of demons to be a multitude in one, to be commingled in an unmingled manner, and to accept the lower races as associated with a distinct concept of the most excellent. But, on the other hand, I describe the race of heroes or demigods as being placed over more common distribution and multitude, and likewise over action and commingling and matters akin to these. It also receives gifts from above, transcendent, and as though concealed within, I mean union, purity of nature, stable condition, and undivided identity and superiority over others. For each of these intermediate races is next to the one of the extreme races beyond. One to the first and the other to the last. It follows as a natural result that by a continued series of kindred relations, the demonian race, beginning from the highest in rank, proceeds to the lower races, and that the other, having primarily a connection with the last of them all, should in some way have communication with those that are superior. So my note, what he's talking about is that it's like it exists on a spectrum, you know. These different races, they exist on a different spectrum, and yet they're each connected to the other. And through those different races, the highest one can still be making contact with the lowest one, which would be us, the incarnate souls. Going on here, it says, hence there may be perceived the complete joining together into one of the first and last races, the gods and the souls, through the intermediaries, the demons and the half-gods, and the entire sameness of nature, alike equally in substance and also alike in power and energy. That, in my note, that makes immediately sense to me in the term of like as above, so below, right? Let's see, there's also a note right here. It says, this distinction of principle is noted in the Chaldean oracles. Pythagoras indicates the same by the terms monad, duad, triad. Plato has different terms which I can't pronounce. Damaskios, by the one, the many, and the union. Another version of the oracles in place of substance has father and for energy, mind, or reason. Okay, continuing. Whereas, therefore, we have made the classification of the four races in these two ways perfectly complete, we think it sufficient in regard to the others, that for the sake of brevity, and because that which remains, the comprehending of the intermediate tribes. So he's saying that, yes, there's four different races, but there's actually more. There's more than that. But he's trying to keep it simple. The comprehending of the intermediate tribes is in a measure already plain. We exhibit only the peculiarities of the extreme races, and hence we shall pass over the intermediate tribes as being already well known, and make a sketch of the others in some way, in very few words. All right, so now we're up to Chapter 3, the superior races, peculiarities of the gods and souls. Okay, in regards to the extreme races, the gods and souls, the former, the gods, is chief, superior, and perfect. The other, souls, that would be us, are inferior and imperfect. The former can do all things at once, uniformly and now, but the other is neither able to do anything completely nor immediately, neither speedily nor individually. The former generates all things and is guardian over them, but the latter has a natural disposition to yield and to turn submissively toward what it generates and has under guardianship. The former being the original cause. Now that's interesting that they say that the former, that these gods are the original cause, because they talk about the original cause as the intelligence that permeates and from which arises the birth of universes and so on. So it's like a intelligent kind of a source field, and then from that we get the demons, who are like physical manifestations of these perfect properties, I guess. It's kind of interesting. Anyways, I just had to interject that. All right. The former, being the original cause, has preeminence over all, but the latter, being dependent upon the pleasure of the gods as from a cause, is coexistent with it from eternity. I have to make a note there that immediately makes me flash to, yes, each and every one of us has an individual connection to that God, that source field, that power that can create universes, and that is the God within. And that's what they're talking about. It's coexistent. We are coexistent with it from eternity. Okay, going on. The former, in a single decisive moment, grasps the ends of all the energies and essences, while the latter, the souls, passes from some things to others, and goes forward from the imperfect to the perfect. So, like, once again, they were commenting earlier, he was saying earlier about how all these different races exist on a kind of a spectrum, right? And so do we. And we travel forward from being imperfect, and then we slowly become more and more perfect. Okay, further still, there exists with the former, the highest and unlimited, superior to all measurement, and so completely formless as to be circumscribed by no formative principles. I got to interject there again, okay? Like, to me, what that sounds like is the source field, and that's got to do with quantum physics, right? It's the source field. I can't think of the right name right now, but it's like a quantum field where everything is on the point of becoming, and it's from that everything arises. So you can't. It's completely formless, and it's so completely formless as to be circumscribed by no formative principles. And yet what's actually interesting about it as well, and they've proven this, is that it changes form and shape according to which individual happens to be looking at it. So it's very individual, right? But anyway, but the latter, that would be us, the souls, the human souls, are dominated by impulse, habit, and inclination. Isn't that true? And held fast both by longings for that which is inferior and by being familiar with things of a secondary character. At length, it is molded in various ways and proportions from them, and hence mind, intelligence, the leader and king of the things that actually are. So what he's saying right there, which is very true, is that everything starts in the realm of the non-physical, that source field, that I can't think of the word. Sorry, I keep blanking on it, but it's like a non-state that is in the action of becoming something. Everything arises from that, so it's coming from a non-physical into an ethereal and eventually manifesting in the physical realm. And so that's why he's saying here, mind is the leader and king of the things that actually are. The demiurgic art of the universe is always present with the gods in the same manner, completely and abundantly, being established in itself, unallied, according to one soul energy. And that, by the way, is spelled S-O-L-E. So what he's saying is it's established in itself, unalloyed, according to individual energy. And again, the monotheistic religions talk about how it's like one God, one blanket solution God for everything. And it's like, no, actually, God is actually a plural. Like it's many, it's individual. And we each have our own individual connection to that God force, that God energy, and we co-create with it, right? And that God is the one that's within. Okay. But the soul partakes of divisible and multiform mind. So there's a note here. It says the Chaldean oracles also recognize this twofold mind. One is pure reason or intelligence, right? This mind they considered as soul, meaning individual, unparticipating and essential. That's that. If you've ever had a near-death encounter, you'll notice that another individual soul or mind or whatever comes forward, and that's the one that normally isn't really participating. It's not at the forefront. But it's there all the time, taking notes, and it's an individual sort of a thing that's there in the background, observing and taking notes, and it's an essential part of our beings. But it doesn't really come to the foreground until we get into a near-death experience, and then it will come to the fore. Okay, but anyway, the soul partakes of this divisible and multiform mind. Okay, so there's one mind that they considered as individual, unparticipating, and yet essential, and the other was described as a participant and divisible into parts or qualities, and that to me would describe like the ego mind, It's connected to the lower chakras. It's all about physical survival. It's that nattering voice that's constantly like, going on. And yet, you know what? That one's also very, very good with survival. Like, the two work together. Anyways, we'll continue here. All right. Soul partakes of divisible and multiform mind, adapting itself to the supreme authority over all. It also takes care of unsouled beings, having been itself born into various forms at different times. From the same causes, order itself and beauty itself are coexistent with the superior races, for if it is desired so to express it, the first cause is coexistent with these. So what they're saying here is that like order and beauty itself obviously are going to be, that's the first cause, which is the source field, I guess, for lack of a better word, right? That quantum field that it's in motion, and yet it's waiting. It's on the verge of motion, and from which all physical matter arises, right? And so the first cause, which is what they're calling it, is coexistent with these superior races. And of course it would be of order and beauty, I mean, just look at snowflakes, look at nature itself, right? There's obviously an intelligence behind all of that, right? That it comes from. At least it seems so to me. All right, going on. First cause is coexistent with these, but with the soul, the allotment of intellective order and divine beauty is always associated. With the gods, the measure of all things, or rather the cause of it, is perpetually coordinate, but the soul is confined to the divine limit and only participates of this in a limited degree. With good reason, there may be ascribed to the gods dominion over all beings by the power and supreme authority of the first cause, that source field, or whatever you want to call it. But the soul, us, we have defined limits within which it can have command. Again, we're existing on a spectrum, is what he's talking about. Such being the different peculiarities of the races at the highest and lowest extremes, what we have now been saying may be understood without difficulty. And also the peculiarities of the intermediaries, the demons, and half-gods, these being each next to one of the extremes, resembling both, and going out from both to the intermediate region, where there's actually more, where he said there's actually intermediate tribes that he hasn't even talked about yet here. Okay. And so effecting a harmonious union by commingling them and joining them together in due proportions. Let such then be considered the peculiarities of the first divine races. The next part is called distinctions of the superior races. Surely we do not admit the distinction of the superior races to be what is suggested by you, quote, a classification established by difference of bodies, the gods being distinguished by ethereal bodies, the demons by aerial bodies, and the souls by bodies pertaining to the earth, end quote. Such an arrangement would be like the assigning of Socrates to a tribe when he was a Prytanis. The heck is that? Okay, the Prytanis of Athens were 50 in number and were selected by the Boule or Senate. And Socrates, at the age of 60, was chosen to that dignity. Okay. And is not proper to be admitted in regard to the divine races, which are all by themselves unbound and free. To make bodies their own first causes as to their specific nature appears to be a fearful absurdity, for they are subservient to those causes and subject to the conditions of generated existence. So when he's talking about generated existence, what he means is where material things have become manifest. Like it's generated. And it's generated by, what do they call that? I keep thinking of it as source field. There's another term for it I'm blanking on. But anyway, yeah. Further still, the races of superior beings are not in the bodies, but govern them from outside. I have to interject here. I think that's super interesting because it has been proven that people that don't even have an actual physical brain in their skulls can completely act like a normal person and remember stuff and totally function like a normal human being. How is that possible? Because there's some part of themselves that is not existing inside of the physical, like the soul, whatever it is, the animating force actually governs the bodies from the outside. That's how it's happening. Okay, anyways. It continues, hence they do not undergo changes with the bodies. So what he's saying there is that these superior beings, because they're not of the body but govern the body from the outside, they don't undergo changes, i.e. they don't age. Okay? They don't change the way we do. Yet they give from themselves to the bodies every such good as the latter, the body, is able to receive, but they themselves receive nothing from the bodies. Hence they cannot have received from them any peculiarities, for if they were as habits of the bodies, as material forms or some other body-like quality, it might be possible for them perhaps to undergo change together with the different conditions of the bodies. But if they pre-exist, separate from the bodies and unmingled with them, what rational distinction originating from the bodies can be developed in them? In fact, this proposition in regard to these races makes the bodies actually superior to the divine races, since by such a hypothesis they furnish a vehicle for the superior causes and fix in them the peculiarities incident to their essence. Nevertheless, it is plain that if the allotments, distributions, and assignments of those that govern are arranged with those that are governed, this authority will be given to the most excellent. For it is because those that are placed over others are such that they receive thereby such an allotment, and give this a specific character, but the essence itself does not become assimilated to the nature of the corporeal receptacle. Whew, that's a mouthful. Now, there's a note with this. I'm going to read the note now. It says, the pre-existence of the soul in the eternal world before becoming involved in the genesis and conditions of the earth life was generally believed in. Even after being set free at death, it was supposed to be, after a period of less or greater length, again attracted back to the earthly or mundane sphere. Plato illustrates this by the vision of Eros in the Republic. The choice of the earthly condition is made by the soul itself, and very generally it differs from what it had been in the preceding term of life in the world. The cause is in him who makes the choice, and the divinity is without blame in the matter. Eros adds that after the souls chose their new lives according as they drew the lots, they all went in their order to Laxus, and she gave to every one the demon that he had chosen, and sent the demon along with him to be the guardian genius of his life, and the accomplisher of the fate which he had chosen. And then he was born anew into an earth life. It's interesting. All right, going on. Hence I may speak as regards the subject in its turn, but a supposition of this kind must be admitted in respect to the imperfect soul. For such a mode of living as the soul projected, and such an ideal as was ready before entering into a human body, there is a corresponding organic body joined to it, and a similar nature which receives its more perfect life. All right, so here's another note. It says the cause or incentive for the coming of the soul into generated life is variously explained by different writers. According to Plotinus, the universal soul does not come to a body as the body may come to it, nor does the body contain the soul, but is contained by it. Simplicius accepted the statement of Iamblichus that the soul projects certain lives for itself. And I actually believe that too. In respect to the superior races, and those which, as being universal, include the origin of all, the inferior ones are produced in the superiors, the corporeal in the incorporeal, and, being encompassed by them in one circle, are governed by them. Hence the revolutions of the heavenly spheres. And there's a note here. It says the stars and the planets were regarded as abodes or receptacles of souls. Hence, the revolutions of the heavenly spheres have been induced originally by the ethereal soul and are always inherent in it. The souls of the world, also being extended to their own mind, are absolutely encompassed by it and primarily generated in it. In like manner also the mind, both that which is divisible into attributes and qualities, and that which is entire as an essential quality, is included as an essential quality of the superior races. Hence the secondary races being always turned toward the primary, and the superiors leading the inferiors as exemplars. Essence and ideal come to the lower races from those who are superior, and those which are ignoble are produced primarily in the more excellent. Hence, accordingly, order and proportion come from the latter to the inferior races, and these are what they are through the former. So we're again, we have this divine connection, and the connection flows both ways. But there is no transmitting of peculiarities from the inferior races to those which precede them. So we might have weird tics and weird things that we have, but it doesn't get transmitted up to these higher levels. Such of a classification, therefore, based on corporeal conceptions is shown by these arguments to be false. Even though in this case it may seem otherwise to you, the false assumption is not worthy of a word. Such a case does not exhibit abundant argument, but one belabors himself to no purpose if he puts forth hypotheses and then endeavors to refute them as not being true. For in what way is essence, which is absolutely incorporeal, having nothing in common with the bodies that partake of it, to be distinguished from such bodies? Not being in any way present with the bodies as a matter of place, how is it to be separated by places after the corporeal manner? And not being separated by circumscribed divisions of subject matter, how is it to be held in a divided condition by the divisions of the world? And what is more, what is there that can hinder the gods from going anywhere and everywhere? What is there to hold their power in check from extending to the vaults of the sky? For this would be the work of a cause far mightier than the one shutting them in and circumscribing them within certain parts. Real being, that which truly is, and which is in itself incorporeal, my note, non-physical, is everywhere, wherever it pleases. My note, right? Satan said there's no place in the universe that does not know my presence, right? Knows not my presence. That's what he's talking about. Yet, as thou takest for granted that which is divine and which transcends all things, is itself transcended by the perfectness of the entire world, and is encompassed by it in a specific division, and hence is inferior in respect to bodily dimensions. Yet, if there is no divine creation and no participation of divine ideals extending through the whole world, I do not see for my part any opportunity for creating and framing of them after specific forms. In short, however, this opinion which banishes the presence of the superior races entirely from the earth is an abrogating of the sacred rites and theurgic communion of the gods with human beings. For it says nothing else than that the divine ones dwell apart from the earth, that they do not commingle with human beings, and that this region is deserted by them. Consequently, according to this reasoning, we priests have never learned anything whatever from the gods, and since we differ in nothing from other men, thou hast not done right in questioning us, as though we knew more than others. Not one of these statements of yours, however, is sound, for neither are the gods limited to parts of the earth, nor are the inferior races about the earth excluded from their presence. Again, he's saying that, we're connected. On the contrary, the superior races are characterized in this way, that they are encompassed by nothing, and that they encompass all things in themselves. But those that belong to the earth have their being in their perfections or pleromas of the gods, And when they become fit for the divine communion, they at once, prior to their own essence, possess the gods that pre-existed in it. The gods within. That's what he's saying. That this entire classification is false, that this plan of investigating peculiarities is irrational, and that the notion of distributing the gods each to a certain region does not permit the receiving of the entire essence and power which are in them, we have fully established. It would have been right, therefore, to omit the dissenting inquiry in regards to the distribution of the superior races, as it contradicts nothing in regard to the true conceptions. On the other hand, our attention should be directed instead to the intelligent perception of matters relating to the gods, and not to the holding of a discussion with a man. And for this reason, we shall adopt the present discourse to the disposing of subjects of probability and matters relating to the gods. How divine races are distributed. I assume accordingly that you ask a solution of that matter of which you seem to be in doubt, namely, as the gods dwell only in heaven, why are invocations at the theurgic rites directed to them as being of the earth and the underworld? This position, which is thus assumed at the beginning, namely, that the gods traverse heaven only, is not true, for the universe is full of them. But you then demand, how is it that although possessing power unlimited, undivided, and unrestricted, some of them are mentioned as being of the water and of the atmosphere, and that others are allotted by definite limitation to different places and distinct parts of bodies, if they are actually separated by circumscribed limitations of parts, and according to diversity of places and subject bodies, how will there be any union of them one to another? One most excellent solution of all these, and an infinite number of similar questions, is by a survey of the matter in which the gods are allotted. This, then, is the explanation. Whether the allotment be to certain parts of the universe, as to heaven or earth, whether to holy cities and regions, whether to certain temple precincts or sacred images, the divine irradiation shines upon them all from the outside, just as the sun illuminates every object from without with his rays. Hence, as the light encompasses the objects that it illuminates, so also the power of the gods comprehends from without those that participate of it. In like manner also, as the light of the sun is present in the air without being combined with it, and it is evident that there's nothing left in the air when the illuminating agent is removed, although warmth is still present when the heating has entirely ceased, so also the light of the gods shines while entirely separate from the objects illuminated, and, being firmly established in itself, makes its way through all existing things. Still further, the light that is the object of perception is one, continuous, and everywhere the same entirety, so that it's not possible for a part of it to be cut off from itself, or to be enclosed in a circle, or at any time to remove itself from the source of illumination. According to the same principles, therefore, the whole universe, being susceptible of division, is distinguished with reference to the one and indivisible light of the gods. In short, this light is one and the same everywhere, and is not only present, undivided, with all things that are capable of participating of it, but it, likewise, by an absolute power and by an infinite superiority, fills all things, as a cause, joins them together in itself, unites them everywhere with itself, and combines the ends with the beginnings. The whole heaven, including with it the universe, imitating this, goes around in a circular revolution, unites all to itself, and leads the elements whirling in a circle, and all things being in one another and borne toward one another, it holds them together and defines their equal proportions, and guiding them to the remotest distances, makes the ends combine with the beginnings. Sounds like the Ouroboros, doesn't it? My note. As, for example, the earth with the sky, and affects a soul connection and a cord of holes with holes. And that's spelt WHOLES. Okay, so something that is complete and entire unto itself with something else that is complete and entire to itself. And it affects connection between those two things. He continues, who then that contemplates the visible image of the gods, thus united as one, will not have too much reverence for the gods it causes to entertain a different judgment, and to introduce among them artificial divisions, arbitrary distinctions, and corporeal outlines. I for one do not think that any one would be so disposed. For if there is neither any analogy, nor scheme of proportion, nor interblending in respect to power or simple energy of that which is set in order with that which sets in order, then I say that there is nothing existing in it, either of extension or in regard to distance, or of encompassing locally, or of division by true setting apart, or by any other such natural equalizing of qualities in the presence of the gods with beings inferior in their nature. For in natures that are homogeneous in essence and power, or that are in some manner of similar form or alike in race, there can be perceived an encompassing or holding fast. But in the case of those that are totally exempt from all these conditions, what opposing circumstance in respect to these things, or pathways through them all, or separate outline, or encompassing in some prescribed space, or anything of this kind, can be justly conceived? On the other hand, I think that they who are partakers of the gods are every one of such a nature as to partake of them according to their own intrinsic quality, some as of the other. I think that's a typo. I think he means some as of the ether, others as of the atmosphere, and others as of the water, which the technique of the divine performances recognizes, and so makes use of the adaptations and invocations according to such a classification. So much may be stated in regard to the distribution of the superior races in the world. Okay, so there's a few notes here I'm just going to quickly read that came up while I was reading that. So Plato affirms in the Epinomis, it is heaven that we should honor, says he. It is the cause of all that benefits to us. Abamam doubtless alludes to Ra of the Egyptian pantheon, who was regarded as the source of light, and also as being the whole heaven united as one icon and personality. Proclus reiterates this declaration so often insisted upon, that the superior nature and essence can receive nothing from that which is inferior. Intelligent readers will understand from what has been said that as the gods are spiritual essences, and the partaking of them, or in other words, of their irradiation, is analogous to the partaking of light, the luminance itself is in no way affected, but the partaker is filled and pervaded by it. And 10, he's mentioning the technique of the divine performances. This is a theurgic rite. This theurgy, says Thomas Taylor, is doubtless the same as the magic of Zoroaster, which was no black art, but a peculiar mode of worship. All right, I'm going to just cover this last little bit, and that should bring us up to the top of the hour. Okay? Superior beings not classified as passive and impassible. After these distinctions, you suggested another classification on your own account and separate the essences of the superior races by the differentiation of passive and impassive. I do not, however, by any means accept this classification. For no one of the superior races is passive, nor yet is it impassible in such a manner as to be thus contradistinguished from any that is susceptible, as being adapted by nature to receive impressions, or as freed from them through inherent virtue or some other excellent condition. On the other hand, it is on this account, because they are entirely exempt from the inconsistency of being either passive or not passive, because they are in no way susceptible to impression, because they are unchangeably fixed in regard to essence, that I set them down in all these respects as impassive and unchangeable. Consider, if you will, the last one of the divine races, the soul, pure from the defilement of bodies. Being superior to the realm of nature and living the unbegotten life, what does it want of the generated life with sensual pleasure and of the restoration thereby into the realm of nature? Now, there's a note here. It says the soul was called by Damaskios, our last echo of divinity. In the mundane region, it was considered as not a whole and united essence, but divided into qualities and traits of character. I think that's really interesting that he says that the soul is our last echo of divinity. This is my note because, that soul is what gives us our empathy, which is what gives us a heart and connects us to that source, whatever you want to call it. The 0 point energy field is what I've been trying to think of, and I kept saying I was blanking on the name. It's like the 0 point energy field, which is, they're calling it something else here, but basically that's what the universe itself, the physical universe, gives rise to, right? But that is our last echo or whatever link to divinity. And so if you voluntarily hand that over to the enemy, you are fucking lost. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, right now, let me see. Being outside of everything corporeal and of the nature which is divisible in respect to the body, and being likewise entirely separate from the accord in the soul which goes down into the body, why is it to participate of the pain that leads to decay and dissolution of the structure of the body? On the contrary, it has no occasion for the susceptibilities which are forerunners of sensation, for it's neither held at all in a body, nor in any way environed by it, so as to have occasion for bodily organs in order to perceive different bodies outside of those organs. In short, however, being indivisible, remaining in the one same form, being essentially incorporeal and having nothing in common with the generating and susceptible body, it can be affected by nothing in regard to classification or transformation, nor, in short, has it any concern whatever with change or condition. But on the other hand, whenever the soul comes into the body, it is not itself, nor are the rational faculties, which it's, try that again. But on the other hand, whenever the soul comes into the body, it is not itself, nor are the rational faculties, which it imparts to the body, susceptible to impression. For these are simple and single ideals, not admitting any disturbing element or entrancement so far as relates to them. It is therefore the something that yet remains that is the cause of such experience to the composite nature. Nevertheless, the cause is not in any way the same as the effect. So this is interesting. There's a note here. It says, Proclus illustrates this by the analogy of a man viewing his own image in a stream of water. He is unchanged as his own person and individuality, but the image exhibits great perturbation. So the soul contemplates its own image as reflected in the body, and though it is itself impassible and unaffected, it may be perplexed by the incidental disturbances. Very interesting analogy. Hence, the soul, being the first genesis and origin of the composite living beings that come into existence and pass to dissolution, is itself, so far as relates to itself, unbegotten and imperishable. So also those that participate of the soul are susceptible to impression and do not possess life and essence in their completeness, but are entangled in the indefiniteness and alien conditions of the realm of matter. Yet the soul, as relates to itself, is unchangeable as being in its own essence superior to impression, and as neither being moved by any preference inclining in both directions, passiveness and impassibility, nor as receiving an acquired versatility in the participating of habitude and power. Since, therefore, we have shown in respect to the last race of the superior orders, namely, the soul, that it is impossible for it to participate in any passive or impressionable condition, how is it proper to attribute this participation to demons and half-gods who are sempiternal and follow the gods and themselves according to their respective grades, preserve and likewise in their several places make the regular arrangement of the divine beings always complete, and do not leave any unoccupied space between the different orders? For this we know for certain, that the passive condition is not only undisciplined but also discordant and unstable, never being in any case its own master, but attached to that by which it's held fast, and to which it is subservient in reference to the sphere of generated existence. This condition of passiveness, therefore, pertains to some other race rather than to one always existing and allied to the gods, not only maintaining the same arrangement, but likewise going around the same circuit with them. And hence, therefore, the demons and all who rank with them after the superior races are impassible. All right, well, that hour went by really fast. Okay, so this concludes part 2, and we're going to pick it up again with chapter 4 when we come back. Thanks for listening, and I hope you're finding this enjoyable and that you're learning stuff. Have a great day, everybody. Bye for now.